Hello. I'd like to begin tonight by acknowledging that I'm broadcasting to and from stolen lands. Currently, I'm broadcasting from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to past, present, and future elders, and to extend that respect to any First Nations people tuning in tonight. I'd also like to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and that though we meet in cyberspace, the computers, the servers, then the fiber optic cables that are used to route this to you tonight, they occupy physical space on what always was and always will be Aboriginal land. This is Toolkits Live. It's a live session that comes to you from Express Media, which is an organization that supports young Australian writers and editors aged 12 to 30. For over 30 years, Express Media has been developing, supporting, and promoting young writers through workshops that develop skills, through opportunities for constructive feedback and publication, and through awards and programs that recognize excellence. Toolkits is an online development program run by Express Media for writers aged 30 and under. Each program includes one-on-one mentoring and feedback from an established writer, specialized presentations like this one from guest artists, and the opportunity to network with other young people working in the same literary form. Toolkits is made possible through the generous support of the Copyright Agency Cultural Fund. The digital storytelling stream of Toolkits, which is part of this live stream tonight, aims to teach the forms, skills, and ethics of creating stories for the web and beyond. It's facilitated by myself. I'm Rory Green. I'm a writer and digital media artist who is currently an online editor for VoiceWorks, which is a publication run by Express Media for young Australian writers and editors under 25. Hannah Jenkins is our special guest tonight. Hannah Jenkins is an arts writer and poet specializing in digital platforms and online writing experiments. They are currently assistant editor and poetry editor of the online arts platform Running Dog, commissioning creative and challenging arts criticism, and also overseeing the Poetry Micro-Residency program. Hannah is also a co-director at First Draft and a strategic communication professional at the University of Technology, Sydney. You can find Hannah's work in Overland, Runway, Scum Mag, and much more. This live session, titled Pitching and Publishing, might have needed an addendum, Pitching and Publishing Digital Literature. We'll be talking about where and how to pitch digital specific work, the process of editing digital work for publication, and also avenues for self-publishing and applying the skills that you've developed beyond digital publishing. Hey, so that's my spiel over. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, thank you.
How's it going?
I want to acknowledge that I'm also broadcasting from Gadigal land and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you for the intro, Rory. That's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great bio. You've got lots of things on, and I'm excited to talk to you about them all. I guess it would be a good place to start might be to tell me about your role as assistant editor for Running Dog and what you do there.
So Running Dog, for people that don't know, is an online arts publishing platform. So we publish art reviews and features of exhibitions and events happening in Sydney and regional New South Wales. We also run a poetry micro-residency where we allow poets to come in and have the space for 2 months and produce 2 poems in our digital space. And we've also been releasing a series of special issues this year, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later.
Yeah, those issues are.
Question is my role in it.
yeah. How do you play? Yeah.
I'm an editor. We're a really small organization. There's just 3 of us. So Running Dog was founded by Naomi Riddle, who ran it as a solo project for a couple of years. And then I was brought in sort of beginning mid 2019. And since then, I guess that's when all of our more experimental digital stuff has started happening, sort of led by, I guess, that poetry micro-residency.
Cool. I'm really excited to dive into the poetry micro-residency and other stuff. I just thought I forgot to add before, if you have any questions for Hannah or myself, You can tweet at us at hashtag EM Toolkits, or you can also post in the YouTube comments for the video, and we'll get them and answer them towards the end of the session. Can you tell me about how Running Dog started publishing interactive and multimedia work? Because that's, I guess, to me, what makes Running Dog stand out in the current kind of literary landscape is this kind of commitment to weird digital stuff.
Look, without overselling myself, I think that is a product of my interests and my sort of practice, and me coming on board in 2019, and then starting up that micro residency, and I guess my curatorial choices in choosing writers who would really who would do something that was unique to an online platform. So I really wanted to get away from things that could have been like in print or more analog styles. I wanted things that were a little bit more challenging and unexpected for us. So that was something that I was really keen on. And then, of course, myself, I write for Running Dog as well. And so I've been publishing some interactive and multimedia kind of works as well.
Where did that like come from when you joined Running Dog? Like, where had you seen like digital or interactive stuff prior to that?
Oh, it's a good question, Rory.
It's okay if you have no idea, because I struggle to figure it out as well. I had to do like
It's very hard for me to like come upon it. I think I'm a very online person. I think I had encountered quite a lot of very digital writing that could only ever exist online in some writing courses I did as part of my master's. I started to sort of teach myself. I went to a course and learnt tracery, started just kind of fiddling around with things. And I think I fell into that kind of digital poetry community in Australia, and it kind of took off from there.
Right. Okay. Cool. It's like a few different sources, similar to my experience kind of coming into this as well. So I'd love to talk to you about like the sort of technical editorial challenges that you faced as an editor for Running Dog. Like what sorts of digital work have you published so far in Running Dog, and like have some been easier than others to get on the site?
Nothing's easy, Rory.
Nothing's easy. Okay. I thought maybe it'd be like, promising.
No. Some things are easy, and I think and I think for anyone, like any online publication, even if you're not doing technical things, even if you're kind of replicating that print model, there are technical challenges that exist in publishing online. Even for us, even if you have just a straight, like a normal poem, it's even just considering things like how do line breaks occur on a mobile view, like just making things responsive, making things work on all different kinds of devices. So I think that even though I am an editor, like in a literary sense, and I have that background, I think so much of what I do as well is almost like this like technical project management side as well, where like like you're the manager of a web page, and you have to do like a lot of back end, like just testing of things and poking things if they break.
So you don't have like a webmaster at Running Dog who handles the sort of code side of things. You do that yourself.
To an extent, if things get really sticky, and if we've got to change something kind of higher up, we do have a web developer that we can bring in. But most of the time, yeah, it's kind of just me poking around.
Ooh.
But yeah, so for some works, for example, like we've published Bitsy works online.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, yeah, we definitely bring in a web developer to make sure that experience is equally good on mobile to desktop, instead of just sort of doing like a straight like iframe embed or something like that. But a lot of the balance between like that literary editorial work and the technical challenges, they all sort of occur at once on a case by case basis. Like it just really depends on the work. It depends on how the writer or the artist has approached something as well. I think we were talking before as well, like it's because I'm also like I guess a writer, a poet, I've used Bitsy, for example. If I want to make editorial changes to a Bitsy game, I know how onerous that is and how complicated that is going to be for an artist to go back and change like the structure of a game. So it's always about just balancing, those editorial concerns with technical concerns along the way, and just trying to make it an enjoyable experience for the writer or the artist, but also just making sure that at the end of the day, we're serving an audience and a readership, and we just want to make sure that everything, that we're generous to them as well.
Yeah, that's a hard balance to keep. When you mentioned Bitsy before, which is a pixel art game maker for those unfamiliar. I helped edit a Bitsy game with Cecile Richard last year for VoiceWorks, and I can remember we spent quite a bit of time working at like a script / storyboard sort of level, because I was just terrified of like having to make like changes like in the
exactly. Or the other kind of like editorial technical challenge I have is writers who have the vision of what they want to achieve and like the functions that they want to do, and it's all laid out just like in a storyboarded, like just in a Google Doc, and then we have no technical idea on how to achieve that, and right. So a lot of Googling, a lot of like, okay, can we just like add some CSS here, like to get this function to do something? Like, okay, how can we build this? Like, do we need to build a whole new like web element and then just use an iframe? Can we build it in the site? Like, how can we achieve something that was conceived without like the technical limitations front of mind? That's always a big one. Yeah.
When you mention iframes, so it's probably worth kind of mentioning this here for those who don't know what like an iframe is, and I guess I don't know. I think some people might be interested to know the kind of infrastructure, I guess, for running dog pieces, because you don't actually like you don't host your pieces in like on your WordPress server.
Yeah, WordPress. Yeah. It depends. For example, the two recent poems by Carly Stone are hosted entirely within the Running Dog site.
Right.
But then there are other things, like for example, take like your work for us last year, or Shastra Deo's work last year, where there are functions happening and there are interactive elements in that like we couldn't possibly like achieve within WordPress. So we build them in a different site where there's a lot more freedom, like it's just a playground kind of site, and then we can instead just bring them in with an iframe, which is basically like putting a window to a different website within your website, which is always like the plan B for things.
Right. So that's like not your like primary, like your go-to approach. Like that's like a backup.
Yeah. It depends. I think some things you can't get around it. Some of the functions and the things that people want to achieve. I work a lot just using iframes for my work as well, just because I like to just push things and see how far it'll go. I think that's a question that you and I have talked about as well before, where I guess digital poetry, digital literature, it's alive in a way that like a printed poem isn't. And it is just constantly sitting there, either like moving and being interactive, but it also has to just be kept alive by all the hardware and software that it uses to play. And so you find then, I guess, that digital literature can never just live in one place. Like it has all these nodes, like, and it relies on all of these other different kinds of sources to be what it is. And then for me, I just think, okay, those are also risk points, because down the track, what happens if like this website where we were hosting something goes down? Who then is responsible for that if it's not just as simple as like housing something and, you know, printing something within a website or a publication? So I think about all of this kind of stuff a lot, because I'm really interested in archiving and like preservation of digital work as well. So I am trying really hard to just keep everything on one website, but it's impossible. You have to be flexible all the time. I think.
Yeah. It's such a it's so scary. Like, I really I love that digital work is, I love that there are so many tools available now for creating interactive stuff, whether it's like Bitsy making pixel art games, or like Tracery, we've mentioned a few times, for creating sort of Twitter bots or computer generated poetry. These are really cool, but like as soon as you introduce like technology that somebody else has made, it's like, if that changes, like what does that mean for the work? And
it's a constraint like put around a work. And I guess as well, my role, like as an editor, whenever we commission someone or engage someone, I try and just like gas everyone up. I just say, go, like, have a vision and like go and like let's aim for exactly what you want to achieve. And only if we like start to realize we can't achieve that, do we just have to start like knocking it down, just obeying like those constraints. But I always want, especially in the poetry micro residencies where people are given 2 months of like that time and permission to experiment, and I really encourage them to try and like push their practice further. And then it's when we start coming to the point where we start thinking about publishing work, that it's like, okay, you created this wonderful thing and it exists, you know, somewhere on the internet. How then can we like rein that in and transpose it in a way that honors the intention of that work, but is also like usable and readable to like a general audience? So it is like, it's just always balancing all of that. Yeah.
I think I know VoiceWorks, we use Netlify to host some of our digital specific work, and then we iframe that in. And I remember we had a problem earlier this year or late last year where a few, like, Netlify changed their sort of domain
.com to .app. And and because we use Netlify as well, and so I get all the emails from Netlify saying like, and it was towards the end of last year into this year, saying we're changing the URL. Don't worry, there's going to be redirects happening, but here's the data, the cutover, if you're concerned and you want to manually check everything. And I had it in my diary, I had it in my calendar. I was like, I'm going to check all our works on this day, and I did, and I guess that's this thing. These works, like I said, they're living, and so as soon as you've like brought in extra tools or technologies, then you are also responsible for those extra tools and technologies.
Yeah, maintaining them over time.
Alive. And so I just like have my ear to the ground with Netlify. I checked anything that was with Netlify on that day, and everything was fine. And then I believe just a couple of weeks later, I got an email from you, Rory, saying, oh, hey, like my work isn't working anymore on Running Dog. And it was that exact issue that Netlify had sort of stated. And I just had to quickly go into the back end of a couple of different works, change a couple of URLs just to get everything back online, even though they'd been sitting there happily, you know, for months and months and months.
That's wild.
And I imagine, like, you know, I will continue to do that going forward, like for as long as I can, because those works, like if they need that care, I think that's part of the trade-off of being able to create interactive digital work, is you've got to keep an eye on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. It's like it's pretty scary, like as a responsibility, but like it's you're right. It's a good trade-off.
You're just trying to keep children alive, and like the amount of children you have is growing.
What was kind of wild about that thing with Netlify was that like it looked fine from Google Chrome, I think.
Yeah.
And it was only on sort of Firefox, which is the browser I use, that this issue occurred. So the fact that like digital stuff, not only is it like different on laptops and mobile devices, but then like it's different across browsers, and then if like a technology updates, then it might affect some browsers and not others, and it's like,
I am always I'm ready for that next Gmail update for emails. Like I'm just like, what does it mean? What does it mean for displays? What does it mean for usability? Yeah.
Can I ask? I'm interested in the editorial process for digital stuff, not necessarily from like a technical point of. I mean, sort of like the technical and the creative are kind of always kind of mixed up and meshed together for me. But like, have you had writers come and kind of pitch digital work to you that like they didn't themselves know how to make, or like also maybe that you didn't know how to make, and like how do you manage that process where you're both kind of building something that you don't really know how to build, while also having like a story to deal with as well?
So I suppose, first of all, if we talk about like story and structure, that is actually really difficult, because you're not, when it's a digital work, you're not editing something like as a review or a feature that has like certain like structural elements. I think digital literature so often, and this is why I love it, sits completely outside of like any like definition of genre or structure. And so then it's you need a lot of nuance and reflection, I think, to be able to edit a work without kind of in any way kind of impinging on like what the vision of the work is. Like I really consider digital literature like 1 foot in the like the visual art world and 1 foot in the literature world, and so I try to be really aware of that. So as an editor, it's like, yes, I'm sub-editing, I'm copy editing, but I'm also just approaching the work as an artwork, trying to often keep much more of a light touch, I think, than I would just with like a written review. And as for people coming through with things that it's not clear how we will achieve it, yes, that does happen. I am extremely passionate about also providing learning opportunities to writers and artists who are interested in doing anything like that is interactive or any kind of digital literature. So whenever that happens, I try to be really consultative and communicate often. What I will often do is go away, research, play around myself with a few options. And often you might find like there's never something that's quite perfect. So you might come up with a few different options that have various pros and cons. And I often actually try and like put that autonomy and artistic decision back to the writer or the artist. So anyone who has worked with me as an editor knows I write like a lot of dot point lists in emails to try and just keep everything really, really clear and easy to understand for writers, so that they have a positive experience like working in like the digital realm, where there are so many layers happening like to this editorial building upload process, but also sort of taking the stress away and like researching, testing some technical options, going back to the writer and saying, okay, here are the options that you have. What would you like to do with it? and then sort of fulfilling their vision that way. And then even as well, like I am, I think, having that level of care is really important, to the point where it's like I will screen share and like do the upload, or like help people build their work before we upload it, so that there is like just that one-on-one kind of learning opportunity happening as well, because you never know, like those skills I think are so valuable for everyone to learn, and they can go and be used like in so many other places. Yeah.
There's a Twitter question. What are some tips digital writers, creators should remember before submitting their digital work to places like Running Dog? What's each of your submission checklist? And I feel like this is probably a good time to talk a bit about, I don't know, there's like two parts of that. There's like people submitting work, and then there's also people pitching stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have like sort of tips for writers who have kind of like partially digital, or like what am I trying to say? Like,
yeah, even if someone has an idea, like I'll accept a pitch with a concept, as long as the digital aspect of it isn't just for the sake of having like an interactive element. I think the best digital work, like any kind of technical element, is really servicing like the message or the theme or the substance of the poem or of the work as well. So that's really what I look for, is writers who can pitch something where it's very well thought through, and they can articulate why that digital aspect is important to the work. Otherwise, generally, like I really enjoy like creative risks. And again, I really enjoy building stuff, and like I said, I adore like helping and teaching other people how to build stuff. So it's never an issue to me if someone doesn't have any previous examples of digital work. I think as long as there's a willingness to learn, or at least an understanding of what's involved, very happy to take that kind of stuff on. We for our pitches, we always ask for previous examples of work, and that doesn't, like, if you're new to digital writing and digital literature, you don't have to show us things that are like whiz bang. It's just, I think, as long as you've considered it.
Yeah, I think for voice work, like, it's interesting that you've said that this sort of digital element has to kind of serve the creative piece. I think for a lot of digital work, like, if there's something like interactive or animated or whatever, like that kind of comes under the form. And I think always like the form and the content of like a piece need to like complement each other and like work together. And you can kind of see in both submissions and like pitches, but more so with pitches where like something's kind of tacked on in a way that
And I would say, I would even go, it's like there's the content, and there's like the function as well. Like, how do you interact with this? And how, again, the priority will always be like, we must be generous to a reader who is going to experience this. How is that interactive element, or how is that, multimedia, like how's the inclusion of GIFs, how is that going to make their experience of this work better?
That's like it makes me think of a lot of kind of like a UX approach almost to digital writing, which I think kind of is super relevant, like the user experience for digital work. And I know when I've developed some pieces for VoiceWorks where, either we got a pitch or we got a submission where we kind of felt like, more like we could flesh out the digital component of the piece.
Mm.
It's always been sort of in collaboration with the writer to sort of say, to help guide the direction of like that experience of the piece, not just the story. And I often find it really helpful to get, and this is just me, like examples of function or interaction that don't necessarily have to be embedded in like in a creative context. Like I love when I see like I get from writers like, I'd like to make this particular piece, this particular part like a drop down, and it kind of looks like this thing, but like get a link to like, like a shop, like a online shopping website, just to get a sense of like what are the sort of interactions or animations or like effects that you're kind of going for. I find that really, really helpful because it's like a different language. It's often a very visual language that can be tricky when working with writers. Like for me,
like it's as intertextual as text. Like, do you know what I mean? Like to pull those functions like a drop down, like that evokes something like for a reader, and getting a reader to sort of perform an action. It has a purpose in the story. That just makes me really excited.
How do you like? It might be a good time to ask you about your own work, because you've talked about, for like, the sort of digital component kind of speaking to what you want to say or the story, and like on top of your amazing editing for Running Dog, you've published kind of every technology that I know of. Like you published so much different work, or like made your own work and had it published in like Twine, Bitsy, Tracery.
And look, I think that speaks to my approach to like using technologies, which is like as soon as I like hear about or learn about a technology, I go and give it a go, because I learn by doing. And I think, the most fun like kind of doing is to like write a poem or write a story, and like see what you can do. And like even if I go and do that, like that first go or whenever I'm learning, like that'll never, or very rarely, become any kind of finished product. But all of the skills that I learn, like I can then retain, and then apply them later. Like I kind of just, like you have a little mental library of like, okay, I know how to do like X, Y, and Z. I still like, I just like jot down drafts of notes like for different ideas and things, just in a Google Doc. But as something starts to grow and develop, I just always just think really carefully without thinking of a particular technology. Think about what is appropriate to add on, like as any kind of like digital or interactive experience, and then what do I know how to do? Because I can't do everything, and then it kind of and it builds from there. But I'm always just like having a tinker, like with stuff. You just have to try and learn stuff, and even like as an editor as well. If I'm helping other people develop their work, I'm off like Googling how things work, and then like retain that as well. So when something's just gonna like pop up and be like a really useful like function or approach in the future.
I think like if you have the opportunity to edit work, even in like a casual interpersonal kind of context, like it's so valuable. I learned so much about poetry from asking to edit my friends, like give feedback on my friends' poetry, and now like getting like messages from you about HTML stuff, and that's like super exciting, and so much of that experience kind of forms a sort of bedrock in my own creative practice that often kind of like comes back up in really weird, unexpected ways. Like you just don't know where those skills kind of pop up again.
Exactly, but it's always like you learn by doing, and I think I'm like, at least I speak for myself, like retain that information better if it was used like to an end, like to a very like concrete outcome. And it's the same, yeah. Like I am in awe of the digital work that Running Dog has published. And that's not because of me, that's because of like the minds of the people who we have published. Like things already come into me in such like a wonderful state generally.
That's so nice to hear.
It's a pleasure, like to be able to just like to uplift and empower others, I think, yeah.
We've got a question here that says, what are some great tools / programs for newcomers to creating digital literature? How user-friendly are things like Tracery, Bitsy, Twine, etc.? And I kind of want to, it'd be good to answer this question, but also I wanted to ask you about like where you submit or pitch digital pieces. So like hypothetical, like you've got an idea for something digital and you want to use like Tracery or Bitsy, you've not used it before.
Yeah.
How, like, what do you have a process for approaching new tools?
Yes, and it is, again, and like I don't know if you'll like this. I like YouTube tutorials, like just get an intro to something, like, you know, just like read an article about something. But again, it is really just like poking around in things and just like you have to just click every single button, see what it does, like, and just remember that. And I think that's how I actually learnt. I accessed and used Bitsy for the first time at National Young Writers Festival in 2018. Shout out to National Young Writers Festival, which is starting today.
Yeah, I know, like right now. So
yeah. I think that was you, Rory. You said there's this workshop on this thing called Bitsy, Hannah. I think you'll really like it. Like, bring your laptop and like come to this workshop. And I was like, okay. Just brought my laptop.
Friend of the Toolkits program, Cecile Richard, ran that. Exactly. That was a great workshop.
But even then, like that's sort of I think, to give some context as well. Even then, like in 2018, like I wasn't really a writer. I was certainly not like a digital writer. And so even back at that stage, like just being able to learn, like you just dip your toes in the water in a workshop, and then all that knowledge, like everything that I learned, like, and I walked out of that workshop with a game. It was very simple, but I retained that. I didn't go back to Bitsy until maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. And I created, using that knowledge from that workshop run by Cecile, and I created like a suite of 4 Bitsy like mini essays, I guess, like interactive essays for an artist in Brisbane, because their art is about video games. And so I realized as I was writing like my response and like this essay about their game, I realized actually like this digital tool is in service of what I'm writing and can like elevate what I'm writing and make the experience better, like for a reader or a player. And so that's why I chose to sort of go back to that tool. And I guess the same, like Tracery, I learned at a quick workshop, and then just kind of tinkered with it.
I think there's also a lot of self-help resources online, like you said, on YouTube, and most tools will have a kind of Wikipedia, like their own their own wiki base.
That's true.
That has like different tutorials and stuff. I find like my experience developing my sort of digital work over the past like couple of years, like I feel like I'm a lot less kind courageous than you, Hannah, and that like pretty much everything I've like spent like, you know, considerable time towards and not just kind of like tinkered with for the sake of tinkering, which I love to do, is in tracery. And that's kind of because I, you know, started with something very, very simple in this kind of tool, this language. And then, you know, the next thing that I published or developed, like I was using the same kind of code, the same like base sort of tool set that I used for the previous work, and then kind of added some more stuff on. So I think there's a lot to kind of say for a sort of experimental approach, not in that like innovative, but experiment as in like you have a very structured, like this is what I'm going to try and find out, and I'm going to do an experiment to find out about it, and then I'm going to analyze that experiment and the results, and like
I do that. And even if the experiment is failed and like you're like, oh, that didn't do what I thought it would do, maybe the thing that you didn't want it to do is actually like something really interesting, and you can go back to that later and you're like, I remember I did this thing before. And so many things I think I've figured out have been like really serendipitous. And that, I find that just delightful, like, because I do like coding is just another language, and like if you just change a few things around, like I just love to see what happens, because maybe it'll look really cool.
I think like you can go into something like Twine or Tracery or whatever, and sort of be like, I want to do this thing with it, and kind of explore and experiment and tinker to try and get that happening, and then when like the process of doing that, you are sort of like mapping out how that tool works for you.
Exactly.
And you can kind of use that and like make work that's like drawing on the like affordances of that particular tool.
Exactly. And I think like to circle back then, I guess, to people like pitching work without the work done, because I also create those works as well. Like I completely just acknowledge and am aware that creative process and that technical process of building a work and discovering things that you didn't know were possible, you didn't think this was going to happen, but it actually like works really well. I understand that like final products evolve so quickly in that kind of space because it's so much more than just like words on a page. So it's actually I love it when we commission someone, they have a pitch for us, and then 10 days later they come back and say, actually, I've been thinking it's going to be a bit different. And I'm like, great. Like,
that's so good. I've got a plug here that I just found. Like, I meant to tell you about this, Hannah, like after Toolkits just like message you. A couple days ago, I found a YouTube channel called The Clinic for Open Source Arts, and they have started running a YouTube series where like a different digital artist gives a brief demo of a tool that they use and like. So Everest Pipkin has like a run through of how they use Bitsy, and then like 5 other videos. And I saw it a couple days ago and I was like, oh my God, this is my like my weekend sorted between NYWS. And kind of on that plug of this YouTube channel I had never known about until a couple of days ago, Clinic for Open Source Arts, or COSA, if anyone's interested. What are your favorite digital publications at the moment? Or like, if you know you were gonna pitch, where have you pitched digital or published digital work, and where would you pitch to?
I've pitched a lot of places, like with mixed success sometimes. I would say at least what I found in Australia, and I think accelerated I think by the events of this year, is that online publications are a lot more open to like experimental or like technically challenging works at the moment. So I think certain publications that you would think, oh, okay, like something this full on, like it's not right for them maybe a year ago, I would say maybe, reconsider it. I think that digital literacy editors, of like website managers, and of like writers and artists is growing all the time. And so I think it's only going to become more accepted to be able to pitch and publish digital literature. I guess I have had success pitching digital works to places like Runway, which is an arts criticism publication. I've also had like pitched and had work like as part of art exhibitions, like in a gallery context. There's a really cool publication called Taper as well, which is like a very specifically like code art publication. And so I've got something forthcoming there. But I would say don't think that like a publication won't accept something. Just send them an email. Like as an editor, I love to get emails from people just asking, just checking, what's the limit? How far can I push it? And I think any publication would love that. It just shows you're interested. I think that, I think a lot of publications are looking at digital literature at the moment. So always, send an email, gauge interest, gauge knowledge, like so that you can adjust the language, like for how you pitch, so you know like what technical terms to use or not. I think that's a big thing that I do. Yeah.
I had a interesting experience having a digital piece published early in the year, and kind of not knowing whether the publication would publish digital work, so did kind of reach out beforehand. And then also it was interesting sort of helping or kind of like giving my code to the editors and the site manager to kind of get it online, and the sort of conversation between myself and the editor of the journal and the site producer of the journal, and how we kind of all had to sort of, we're all on slightly different sort of levels of technical knowledge, and sort of that process of learning how to talk about my work at a technical level across different levels of complexity is really interesting and a good learning experience.
That's something I'm very aware of, is just those different levels of like technical language to use. And I guess that is, again, like it's that same thing, I guess, like your experiences where like you've created something that like can exist like anywhere in the internet, and then the constraint is to publish it on a site that is following like a traditional analog kind of publishing structure. And it's the same at Running Dog. Like we have that challenge. I've had the same thing. Like you send code off to a publication, and they are confident that they'll be able to make it work. And then 11th hour, it's not working. And then it ends up being sort of just linked out to like the Netlify kind of hosted page instead. I think it's really important to be flexible in those kind of situations. And I guess as like the writer or artist to be available to help with that troubleshooting as well. Like I'm always really happy to do that. I've also had really great experiences where you just hand off the code and they say, great, got it. And then it looks perfect on the site the next day. So I think it does. Like, it just really depends on that level of knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's always like a collaboration between the writer and the person responsible for publishing.
It's site structure. Like, it's what the back end of a website looks like and what it can handle. Like, what platform is it using? Like, what can it accommodate and what can't it accommodate? And I think those are things like that you can't know before you pitch, or even before you like submit work after you have been commissioned. And you just kind of gotta take like a problem-solving approach. For every single work is just like a puzzle to solve, I think.
Can we go back to, you mentioned Runway as an arts criticism journal, and then also having stuff published in gallery contexts. It's really interesting to me about, or one of the things that's interesting to me about digital work is that that line between like digital literature and that line between like digital art is super messy. And I know you have like an arts curatorship background.
I'm particularly aware of it because Running Dog is an arts publication. I have a background in like, curating and like that kind of like arts culture, as well as like that like literary editing. So I sort of sit between those two spheres. And I think, digital literature definitely like, it messily sits between those two spheres as well. But I think as well that tension is what is so exciting about editing, about like building and publishing works like that. I think it's really important for any practitioner to kind of, like step outside of their bubble, like just go and try and do something, a little bit more challenging, even if it's just in the adjacent bubble. I think that's what else is there? Of course, like we have to push that.
I think a lot of writers don't realize that like digital or interactive work, because it fits in that kind of fuzzy space between digital art and digital literature, there's like a lot more publication avenues for work than you might realize, because it often you can kind of, I don't want to say get away with, but like you can pitch a interactive digital story or poem or whatever as like an art piece, and I even just like calling it something slightly different like that.
And I've had this problem a lot where like work has been accepted and then editors have to come back to me and say, is this a poem or is it art? Like, what section do you want it to go in? And like, you decide. The work is what it is. Categorize it how you wish.
That's such a strange, like, I don't know, thing to want to ask, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But you're so right. Like, there is such a rich, long, deep history of like net art that is literary. And then I think that there is this like emerging but like not necessarily new kind of movement of, I guess, like literature that is digital. And I can kind of see like, you have to sort of be aware of both and like just play in that space, I think.
There's like really kind of interwoven histories, I guess, in all, like always between art and literature, but like particularly in that digital realm.
I think so.
We're kind of nearing the end, but I wanted to ask about like publication and development opportunities outside of the sort of journal sphere. So like self-publication options for digital writers, and also like just opportunities to use the sort of skills that you pick up as doing digital work that you can use in non sort of literary contexts. Have you had that experience?
Yeah, and I think again, like that's to my point where I think there's this narrow view that like digital literature has to be like published in a literary sense, published to be like valued or valid, when so much like art can happen online without like having to go through the confines of a publication. I think digital literature is so like there are no barriers. Like you can build and publish something for free, and then
like on Itch platform, like Itch.io.
It has a URL. Like you can share that as well, and I think that that's equally exciting. I think being able to do that as well is a really good way to like embed those technical skills or those storytelling skills, like while you're sort of getting used to that way of creating. And then works like that, you never know what will happen with them later. They can become part of like a portfolio on your website and things like that as well. I think there's so many applications and ways that digital literature can be discovered and enjoyed in so many different contexts. I just don't think that there are limits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I back that 100%. Do you have any kind of final anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to kind of bring up? I feel like we've gone through a lot of stuff tonight, but also I'm gonna get off this and be like, oh no, we should have talked about blah 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 blah.
I cannot think of anything. I just encourage everyone to digital literature is just like the coolest thing. Come on. Publish something. Yeah.
Have you do you talk with other people much? I mean, I feel like this is a loaded question because I know you talk to me a lot about the process of developing digital work, but are you involved in any other kind of like online spaces or like IRL spaces where you talk to people about the process of kind of prototyping or editing sort of digital pieces?
Like, honestly, I really don't. Rory, you are my outlet for thinking about technology. It is my it is just such like a hobby, and like my alone time is like doing all of that tinkering and doing all of that kind of that editing. So yeah, I've never really sort of sought out a community or anyone except you, Rory.
Well, I've learned so much from chatting with you about work that I've been working on, stuff that you've been working on, just stuff that we see on the internet. Exactly. I think there's lots to not just like tinkering, which I do so much as well, but like co-tinkering, that experience of like
tinkering,
looking at something and then being like, oh my God, did you know that this tool can do this thing?
Yes, co-tinkering is perhaps one of the most valuable things. And like, I think that is the role of an editor in like that kind of digital context as well, is like there's that literary like editorial role, but then like they are someone that like can co-tinker with you and that has an understanding of those technical elements as well. And it's sharing files. It's like sharing access to like the source code, just so someone can go in there and like check you're not, you haven't lost your mind, about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually would love to, like, now that I've basically admitted that I don't have any friends, I would love, I would love for there to be like a digital literature community for people to co-tinker. I think the VoiceWorks Lit Jam was like such an excellent like start to that kind of community building in the Australian kind of lit scene. So I would love to be involved like with things like that in the future. I think that's such a valuable thing to have. Yeah, second, third, fourth set of eyes on, because you're playtesting literature.
Yeah,
like that's what you're doing. Like you're playtesting someone's poem to see if it's working and like getting like the proper response and experience.
God, I'm so excited to see how the sort of digital literature community kind of grows in Australia over the next couple of years, because I feel like there's just been a big
there's momentum, truly. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that it is such an exciting time. If you're new to digital literature, just like
get on board.
Yeah, it's great, and it's the best time to just like start learning now. Because there are amazing people like Rory, who
and all the VoiceWorks editors as well on VoiceWorks Online. We have a big team. They're so fantastic. All right, thank you so much for talking with me, Hannah. If people want to know more, they can How can they contact you? Can they contact you?
Yes. I'm on Twitter.
That's your Twitter handle. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and see you all in cyberspace.